What makes the difference between a leader who brings their entire team home safely and one who, marches them straight into a trap?
Yeah, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is. Welcome to the deep dive for the Simplified Awakening channel. And before we really get into it, please hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share your thoughts in the comments below.
Definitely. Your comments really help the community grow.
Exactly. Because today, we are tearing apart an ancient text that answers that exact leadership question. We are pulling a single, highly revealing thread from the Jataka Tales.
Right, specifically story number 11.
Yeah, the Lakkhanajataka. And the setup for this narrative is just a masterclass in observing human nature.
Oh, absolutely. So we find ourselves at the bamboo grove near Rajagaha, and we're observing what you might call, well, the ultimate real-time case study in leadership collapse.
Right, a total meltdown.
Exactly. The followers of the Buddha are watching two prominent figures in their community experience drastically different realities. You've got Devadatta, who is standing there entirely stripped of his influence. I mean, he has just lost his entire following.
Wow. And then on the other side?
On the other side of the grove is Sariputta, who has just returned surrounded by this glorious, thriving following of his kinsfolk.
I mean, the contrast is brutal. You have one leader staring at empty space, and another acting as the center of gravity for a massive community.
Yeah, it's a stark visual, and the Buddha observes this split-screen reality and essentially tells his followers, I've seen this movie before.
Like, this isn't new.
Right. He explains that this exact dynamic, Devadatta losing everything and Sariputta gaining glory, it actually played out between these two souls in bygone days. The current reality is just, an echo.
So the followers obviously ask him to reveal what happened, right? Since it's been concealed from them by the cycle of rebirth.
Yeah, they want the whole story. So the narrative transports us away from the bamboo grove and back into the ancient kingdom of Magadha.
Magadha, okay.
And the Buddha reveals that in a past existence, he was born as this magnificent stag. He was the leader of a massive herd of 1,000 deer living deep in the forest.
1,000 deer. Managing 1,000 wild animals is, that's a logistical nightmare just to keep them fed.
Oh, for sure. It's a huge responsibility. And as this old stag king ages, he decides to initiate a succession plan.
Time to pass the torch.
Exactly. He splits his enormous herd right down the middle. He hands 500 deer to his son named Blacky, and the remaining 500 to his son named Lucky.
Okay, so a perfectly even split.
Right. But this handover of power happens to coincide with the most lethal time of the year in Magadha.
Which is harvest time.
Yes. The crops stand thick in the fields, and the local peasants are fiercely protective of their livelihoods. They know the deer are coming.
Naturally. They want to eat the crops.
Yeah, and the text explicitly details the gauntlet these peasants set up. They dig pitfalls, they fix stakes into the ground, they set stone traps and plant snares.
Wow.
It is a literal minefield designed to kill anything that threatens the harvest.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because the father stag knows there are deadly traps everywhere, right?
Oh, yeah. He's well aware.
And he just tells his kids, take your herds, go to the mountainous tracts of the forest, and don't come back until the harvest is completely over.
That is his directive, yes.
But wait, he gives them the destination.
Yeah.
But he doesn't map the route.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't give them tactical instructions on how to survive the journey.
No, he doesn't.
See, that doesn't sound like brilliant leadership to me.
Yeah.
That sounds like reckless parenting.
Yeah.
Why is the text framing this hands-off approach as wisdom?
Well, because if he dictates every single step of the migration, it is no longer a test of their leadership. It's just an extension of his own.
I see.
The Buddhist doctrine underlying these narratives places a really heavy emphasis on individual agency. The father is creating a controlled experiment.
The stress test.
Exactly. The environmental variables are identical. The resources, meaning the 500 deer each, are identical. The objective is identical. The only variable is the internal operating system of the two new leaders.
So he is forcing them to demonstrate their character through their tactical choices.
You hit the nail on the head. He gives them the what, but the how is entirely up to them.
That makes a lot of sense. It reminds me of like a CEO handing over the reins of a company right as a predictable, severe market downturn hits.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Right. The departing CEO says, hey, we need to weather the storm, cut costs, and retreat to a safe position until the market recovers. But the new executives have to figure out how to actually execute that retreat without tanking the business.
Right. And you get to see what they're really made of.
Exactly. So let's look at how Blacky handles this incredibly dangerous migration.
Well, the text describes Blacky's approach as completely ignorant of the right times to travel. I mean, he has the mandate to move his herd, but he lacks any strategic patience.
What does he do?
He marches his 500 deer early in the morning, late in the evening, and straight through broad daylight.
Wait, broad daylight? Moving a herd of 500 animals in broad daylight past peasants who have actively set lethal traps. That is
It's
mind-boggling.
completely reckless.
Why would anyone do that? I mean, here's where it gets really interesting, psychologically speaking. Because Blacky doesn't fail because his deer are slower or weaker, right?
No, not at all. They're the exact same kind of deer as Lucky's.
Right. He fails because of the mechanism of ego. It's like arrogance creates this cognitive dissonance where you convince yourself the rules of gravity simply don't apply to you.
Oh, completely.
He probably looked at his status as a newly minted Stag King and assumed the environment would just, bend to his convenience.
Yeah, but the environment rarely bends to convenience, especially not angry peasants guarding their crops.
So what happens?
Well, the peasants are wide awake. They easily spot Blacky's massive parade of deer. I mean, they're right out in the open, so they ambush the herd.
That's devastating.
And the text is unambiguous about the outcome. Blacky loses his entire following.
Entire following.
Every single one. Every one of the 500 deer entrusted to his care is killed by the traps and the peasants. Blacky returns to the mountainous tracks completely alone, shorn of his herd.
Wow. That CEO analogy really holds up here. Blacky is the newly appointed executive who, right in the middle of a massive recession, launches a flashy, expensive marketing campaign because he refuses to acknowledge the hostile market reality.
Yes. He wants to operate on his own schedule.
Reality be damned, and he bankrupts the entire company in the process. His people pay the ultimate price for his delusion.
It's tragic, but then you contrast that catastrophic failure with Lucky's execution of the exact same mission.
Right, the other brother.
Yeah. Lucky is described in the text as astute and wise. He understands the psychology of the peasants and respects the reality of the danger.
So he knows the stakes.
He does. He knows that daylight means visibility, and visibility means death.
He doesn't complain about the peasants being unfair. He just, accepts the constraints of the environment.
Precisely. He adapts his strategy to ensure survival, so he stays far away from the villages, avoiding the temptation of the crops entirely.
Smart.
And most importantly, he imposes strict discipline on himself and his herd. He only moves them under the cover of midnight.
Midnight marches. See, that requires suppressing the ego entirely. It is slow, it is cold, and it is terrifying.
It's grueling work.
Imagine the sheer emotional regulation it takes to lead 500 skittish animals through a dark forest. You have no visibility. You are relying entirely on heightened senses, constantly checking the perimeter, keeping everyone absolutely silent.
And you can't rush it.
No, you can't. You have to move at the pace of the slowest member of the herd to ensure nobody triggers a snare in the dark. It is the absolute hardest way to travel.
But it is the only safe way. Lucky puts the mission and the survival of the herd way above his own comfort.
And it pays off.
It really does. The result speaks to the efficacy of that discipline. He successfully navigates the lethal gauntlet, bringing every single one of his 500 deer safely to the mountain refuge without losing a single life.
The binary nature of this outcome is just chilling. One leader loses everyone, the other leader saves everyone. There is literally no middle ground.
None at all. And this brings us to the moment of accountability in the mountains.
Right, because the father is waiting.
The old father Stag is there, and he watches the arrival of his two sons. He sees Lucky arrive with a massive, healthy herd, and then he sees Blacky emerge from the forest completely alone.
I can't even imagine that moment. What does the father say?
In the tradition of the Jataka tales, the father composes a stanza to crystallize the moral weight of what just happened. He says, "The upright kindly man hath his reward. Mark Lucky leading back his troop of kin, while here comes Blacky shorn of all his herd."
Oh, look at the specific mechanism of the word kindly in that stanza.
Right. It's really interesting.
It is, because we often mistakenly equate kindness in leadership with politeness or, being soft or avoiding conflict.
Yeah, being a pushover.
Exactly. But this story redefines kindness as a tactical advantage. Lucky's kindness wasn't about being nice to his deer. His kindness was the grueling discipline of the midnight march.
That's a great point.
His kindness was being fiercely protective, whereas Blacky's arrogance, his demand for convenience, that was the ultimate cruelty.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the text takes it a step further by tying this ancient past back to the present reality at the bamboo grove.
Okay, the reveal.
Right. The Buddha reveals the identification of the births. He tells his followers that the reckless Blacky the Stag who marched his herd to their deaths was the past incarnation of Devadatta.
The same Devadatta standing alone without his followers in the present day? That is wild.
It is. And the wise, astute Lucky the Stag who brought his herd safely through the dark was Sariputta, who stands there in the present day surrounded by a glorious following.
Wow. And what about the father stag?
The Buddha notes that the wise father stag who set the test was the Buddha himself.
Man, this completely reframes how we understand the concept of karma.
How so?
Well, karma here isn't presented as some mystical cosmic scorecard where an invisible judge is handing out rewards and punishments. It is described as a behavioral feedback loop.
Yes, a continuation of habits.
Exactly. It's about the deep ingrained grooves of our personality. Devadatta didn't just have a sudden lapse in judgment that cost him his followers. He lost his followers because he fundamentally operates the exact same way he did when he was Blacky the Stag.
Right. He has a broken operating system built on ego and a total lack of situational awareness.
And that psychological continuity is the core lesson. Habitual behavioral loops carry massive momentum.
They do. Sariputta's success was not an accident of timing or, luck. His upright and kindly nature, his mindful, protective leadership, it was a cultivated trait that endured across lifetimes.
The narrative basically argues that our choices in our fundamental character traits echo across time until we either break the negative loop or master the positive one.
Yeah. It makes you look at modern leadership through a completely different lens.
It really does. I mean, we spend so much time evaluating leaders based on their technical skills, their charisma, or what's on their resumes.
But this text suggests the only metric that actually matters when the pressure is on is their underlying character.
Right. Because when the market tanks, or a crisis hits, or literal traps are set, technical skill won't save you if the leader's ego blinds them to the danger.
The peasants in the story are just a perfect metaphor for the inevitable friction of reality. The dangers are fixed.
Yeah, competitors exist, crises happen, pitfalls are dug.
A leader cannot control the existence of the traps. And complaining about the traps is useless. The only element within the leader's control is how they regulate their own psychology to guide their people through that hostile landscape.
Blacky operated as if the traps shouldn't apply to him.
While Lucky acknowledged the reality of the traps and built his entire strategy around avoiding them,
Shorn of all his herd. That phrase from the father's stanza is haunting.
it really paints a picture of absolute isolation.
It does. Devadatta standing alone in the bamboo grove, Blacky standing alone in the mountains. The text is making a profound argument that isolation is the natural, inevitable consequence of selfish leadership.
Because true leadership inherently generates community.
Exactly. People naturally gravitate towards safety, wisdom, and protective discipline.
The followers of Sariputta remain with him because they survived because of him. The Jataka framework forces the listener to use character as a diagnostic tool.
A diagnostic tool. I like that.
If a leader demonstrates a reckless disregard for the well-being of their team in small matters, like if they march you in broad daylight when the stakes are low, the text warns that this is not an anomaly, it is their nature.
They will lead you right into the pitfalls when the stakes are high because they lack the emotional regulation to do otherwise.
Exactly. This ancient story about deer navigating a harvest, it just feels urgently relevant today.
Oh, totally. We see the Blacky and Lucky dynamic playing out constantly in boardrooms and grassroots movements across global stages.
You have leaders who demand absolute loyalty but offer zero protection, operating entirely on ego.
And then you have the quiet leaders who shoulder the immense burden of the midnight march to ensure everyone arrives safely.
It forces a mirror onto both the leader and the follower.
How do you mean?
For the leader, it asks, are you cultivating the discipline to navigate the dark, or are you prioritizing your own convenience? And for the follower, it poses an even more immediate question regarding who you allow to guide your path.
Yeah. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I really want you, the listener, to actively apply this diagnostic tool to your own life. Look around at the landscape of your career, your community, your industry.
Reflect on the Blackies and the Luckies in your orbit.
Yes. When you choose to align yourself with someone, whether that is a direct supervisor, a mentor, or a public figure, ask yourself a hard question based on their track record.
Are you following someone who suppresses their ego to navigate carefully through the dark, ensuring everyone makes it through?
Or are you following someone who is marching you blindly into broad daylight, straight toward the snares, simply because they refuse to acknowledge the danger?
The snares will always be there in the tall grass, The only variable that dictates whether you survive the crossing is the character of the one leading the way.
That is the ultimate takeaway right there. So I want to humbly remind you to hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and head down to the comments to share your thoughts on the Lakkhanajataka.
We'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to endure a midnight march under a fiercely protective leader?
Or, on the flip side, have you survived the fallout of a broad daylight disaster? Your insights make this entire community richer.
They really do.
And make sure you stay hooked and join us right here on the Simplified Awakening channel for the very next story. It promises to challenge your perspective just as much as this one did. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.